The city lights shimmered like 1,000 diamonds against the night sky, casting an elegant glow over the luxurious rooftop club. Inside, the rich and powerful lounged in plush velvet seats, sipping golden drinks and murmuring in low, amused voices. It was a place where wealth wasn't just displayed, it was worshipped. And tonight, one man sat at the center of it all, his presence commanding the room like a king on his throne. Nathan Carter leaned back in his leather chair, his tailored suit crisp, his watch worth more than most people made in a year. His smirk was sharp, laced with arrogance, as he swirled the whiskey in his glass. To him, life was a game, and he always played to win. He had everything: money, status, power. But what he enjoyed most was proving that those beneath him would always stay beneath him. And tonight, he had found his next amusement. Across the city, in a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a flickering light bulb, Emily Davis folded the last of her cleaning rags. Her hands were rough from years of scrubbing floors and wiping down expensive furniture she could never afford. She was used to being invisible, just another worker, ignored by the people she served. But when her phone buzzed and she saw Nathan Carter's message, her heart skipped a beat. "Meet me at the Royale tonight. Dress nice. I want to show you something." She stared at the message, her brows furrowing. The Royale. That was the most exclusive club in the city, the kind of place she'd only seen in magazines. Why would Nathan invite her there? He was one of the wealthy clients she cleaned for, a man whose cold gaze always seemed to linger on her just a little too long. He barely spoke to her beyond orders, never looked at her as an equal. This invitation, it didn't make sense. Mixture of suspicion and curiosity churned in her stomach. Maybe he had a job offer. Maybe this was some kind of mistake. But a tiny voice in her head whispered a warning. Nathan Carter didn't do kindness. Still, she had nothing to lose. Emily pulled out the only dress she owned that might pass for fancy. A simple black one she had bought from a thrift store years ago. It wasn't designer, it wasn't flashy, but it was clean, and that was enough. She brushed out her hair, applied a bit of lipstick, and took a deep breath before stepping out into the night. Back at the Royale, Nathan checked his watch, a slow grin spreading across his face. He had told his friends about his little plan, and they were waiting eagerly, sipping expensive cocktails as they whispered amongst themselves. This was going to be entertaining. The poor girl would walk in, out of place, awkward, completely unaware of what was about to happen. He could already hear the quiet laughter, see the smug looks on their faces as they watched her struggle to fit in. He didn't invite her to be kind. He invited her to prove a point. Some people didn't belong in places like this. The clock ticked closer to her arrival, and the anticipation in the air was almost electric. The doors to the club swung open, and the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Emily stepped inside, her heart pounding, her hands gripping the strap of her small purse. She felt the weight of 100 eyes land on her at once, the room falling into a hushed, expectant silence. But what happened next was something no one saw coming. The moment Emily stepped inside, she could feel the air shift. The low hum of conversation quieted just enough for her to notice. It wasn't silence, not exactly, but a pause, like the room was waiting for something. Her fingers curled around the strap of her purse as she took a few hesitant steps forward. She had expected to feel out of place in a club like this, but she hadn't expected the stares, the amused glances, the smirks exchanged between strangers. And then she saw him. Nathan Carter sat at a corner table, his arm draped lazily over the back of his chair, a glass of whiskey in his other hand. His expression was unreadable, but there was something about the way he looked at her, like he was measuring her reaction, waiting for her to realize something. A few people at his table turned to glance at her, then whispered to each other, barely hiding their laughter. Emily swallowed hard. Something wasn't right. She forced herself to keep walking, steady and composed. She had no idea why Nathan had invited her here, but she wasn't going to let these people intimidate her. She reached his table, meeting his gaze, refusing to look away first. "You made it," he said smoothly, as if this was some casual meeting between friends. "I wasn't sure if I should," she admitted, her voice calm. "You never said why. You invited me," Nathan smirked, and took a sip of his drink. "Sit," he said, motioning to the empty chair across from him. Emily hesitated. Every instinct told her to walk away, but she sat down anyway. She was here now, and she needed to know what this was about. Nathan leaned forward slightly. "You clean houses all day, right? Scrubbing floors, wiping down tables, picking up after people who don't even notice you're there." His tone was light, casual, but there was something behind it, something sharp. Emily's jaw tightened. "That's my job." "Right," Nathan said, tilting his glass. "I just thought maybe you'd like to see the other side for a change. A place where you don't have to pick up after anyone." Across the table, one of his friends, a woman in a sleek red dress, let out a soft chuckle. Another leaned in and murmured something under his breath, making the others smirk. Emily felt her pulse quicken. So that was it. He hadn't invited her here out of kindness. He had invited her here to humiliate her, to remind her she didn't belong. She could feel the heat rising to her face, but she kept her expression neutral. She had dealt with people like him before. People who thought money made them superior, who saw others as entertainment. But what Nathan didn't realize was that she had spent her whole life being underestimated. Emily picked up the menu in front of her, her fingers steady, as she skimmed the overpriced items. "Nice place," she said simply. "But I doubt you brought me here just for small talk." Nathan's smile widened, as if he was enjoying the way she was playing along. "You're right," he said. "I actually had a little wager in mind." Emily glanced up, waiting. Nathan set his drink down. His eyes locked onto hers. "One night," he said, "you act like one of us. Dress the part, talk the part, see if you can blend in. If you can make it through the night without anyone realizing you don't belong, I'll pay you triple what you make in a month." His words sent a ripple through the table. His friends exchanged intrigued glances, some leaning in closer, eager to see what she would say. Emily inhaled slowly, keeping her face unreadable. So that was the game. He wanted to see her struggle, wanted to watch her fumble and embarrass herself. He thought this was a joke. But what Nathan didn't know was that Emily had spent years watching the wealthy from the sidelines. She had cleaned their houses, heard their conversations, seen the way they moved, the way they talked. She knew their world better than they realized. She set the menu down, looking him straight in the eye. "Make it 6 months' pay, and I'll play your little game." Nathan blinked, caught off guard for the first time that night. His friends let out small gasps, a few murmurs passing between them. The amusement in his eyes flickered, replaced with something else. Curiosity. "You think you can actually pull it off?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. Emily shrugged. "You tell me," she said, keeping her voice steady. "You're the one who thinks I don't belong here." Nathan studied her, his smirk returning. He liked a challenge, and Emily had just given him one. "Deal," he said, reaching out his hand. Emily shook it, ignoring the way his fingers lingered against hers for just a second too long. The game had begun, but what neither of them knew was that before the night was over, the rules would change. Because Emily wasn't just here to play along. She was here to win. The moment Emily shook Nathan's hand, she knew she had entered dangerous territory. This wasn't just a game for him. It was a test, a performance designed for his amusement. But what he didn't realize was that she had no intention of playing the role he had written for her. As the night unfolded, Emily slipped effortlessly into the world of wealth and privilege. She observed, adapted, and responded with a quiet confidence that caught Nathan off guard. When the waiter arrived, she ordered a dish without hesitation, pronouncing its complicated name with ease. When someone made a passing comment about art, she referenced a famous painting she had once seen while cleaning a gallery. The more she spoke, the more the room began to shift. The smug grins turned into curious stares. Nathan's friends, who had been waiting for her to fail, started seeing her in a different light. They asked her questions, laughed at her remarks, and soon she wasn't just playing along. She was commanding the conversation. Nathan watched, his smirk fading slightly. He had expected her to stumble, to make mistakes, to prove his point, that she didn't belong. But instead, she was proving something else, something he wasn't prepared for. As the night wore on, the tension between them changed. It was no longer just a game of power. It was something more. Nathan wasn't just amused anymore. He was intrigued, and that unsettled him. At one point, he leaned in, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You're full of surprises," he admitted, his tone no longer mocking. Emily met his gaze, her eyes steady. "People like me see more than you think," she said. "You just never noticed." For the first time, Nathan had no response. But just when it seemed like the night would end with an unexpected twist, reality hit like a crashing wave. A woman from another table, clearly someone from Nathan's elite circle, glanced at Emily and frowned. "I know you," she said, tilting her head. "You're—" Her eyes widened slightly. "You're the cleaning lady from the Harrington estate." The room went silent. Nathan's friends turned, waiting for his reaction. The old amusement flickered back in his eyes, but this time it wasn't as sharp. He had a choice to make. He could laugh it off, humiliate her the way he had planned from the start, or he could admit what he was beginning to realize, that Emily had done more than just fit in. She had outshined them all. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, to everyone's surprise, he picked up his glass and raised it slightly. "To unexpected guests," he said smoothly. "Sometimes they teach us more than we expect." There was hesitation, but slowly, his friends raised their glasses too. Emily held his gaze for a moment before standing up. She had proven her point. She didn't need to stay any longer. "Good night, Nathan," she said, turning toward the door. As she walked away, she felt something shift in the air. Not just in the room, but within Nathan himself. He had invited her to humiliate her. Instead, she had left him questioning everything. He thought he knew, and for Emily, that was the real victory.